Hey there, friends. David Lightbringer here. Ooh, wow, that's a little peppy. Probably don't need it that high. To light the candle. Oh, that's a little low. So A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the season finale, just ended a mere couple hours ago. And even though it was kind of a decompression aftermath episode, it was very, very compelling. I'm sure you will agree if you're watching this video. And the reason it was so compelling, besides the fact that we can all imagine Sweetfoot eating unlimited apples with Raymond Fossaway and his new wife, Rowan. And also because they finally addressed the 9, 7, 8, how many kingdoms are there thing. That was just glorious. No, the reason why the episode was so compelling was because of the crucial decisions that some of the main characters had to make. I thought it would be fun to do a little video unpacking the decision-making process, the thinking behind these decisions, and so here we are. And so the questions we want to answer are: why did Egg insist on only squiring for Dunk? Why did Dunk refuse Maekar's offer to serve him at Summerhall and train Egg that way? And also, why did Dunk refuse Lyonel's offer to take him to Storm's End? Besides the fact that everyone agrees it's kind of a dreary and boring place. I mean, it's not a very good pitch, really. And then why did Maekar go from initially backing Aerion to punishing him? And why will Maekar ultimately agree to allow Egg to hit the road with Dunk and live that Hedge Knight life? I know this is a change from the books. In the books, obviously, Maekar gives permission for Egg to go, whereas they made it a little bit of a gag on the show. Where's my son? He's run off again, which I did enjoy. It was funny. But ultimately, Maekar will accept this. Don't expect season 2 to open with Maekar hunting down kidnapper Dunk with dogs, to get his son back. That's not going to happen. So for all intents and purposes, the show is just delaying Maekar's acceptance of the Hedge Knight setup to an off-screen moment. So we'll go ahead and analyze that whole evolution of Maekar's decision-making as if he has made that decision already, because he's going to, and we're not going to see it. We'll also go back a couple weeks to talk about Baelor's big decision, why he decided to fight for Dunk in the first place. A brave and valiant act which Lyonel tried to undermine in tonight's episode. Some people in the chat were upset about that. But yeah, obviously Baelor's decision is the thing from which the rest of the plot flows. So we'll talk about that. And while the intro music plays, please do click the thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And we'll see if we can't answer these questions, and in doing so, explain why the Hedge Knight comes across as such a satisfyingly moral, upright story. All right, so going back a week, let's answer the question of why Baelor chose to fight. So the first truth here, the central truth, is that Dunk is in the right. Everything else flows from that. He was a knight who remembered his vows to protect the weak, particularly women and children. So at first, Baelor tells Dunk, it's never wise to strike a prince. And he's right about that. But the thing is, Dunk wasn't trying to be wise. He was trying to do the right thing. And as we discussed in our Knights and Fools video, doing the right thing is often a little bit foolish. In the end, this basic truth of Dunk's rightness seems to have cut through the political considerations and sunk in for Baelor. When he took the field to the Game of Thrones theme and declared that I will join Sir Duncan's side, we all cheered, except for Maekar, who was all like, have you taken leave of your senses? This man attacked my son. So Maekar's belief is essentially that a ruling dynasty must always show strength and intolerance of defiance. However, Baelor answers, this man protected the innocent, as all true knights must. And he's clearly implying and insinuating to Maekar that, this duty also applies to us. We are not above these basic laws of the land simply because we are princes. Now, I would argue that Baelor isn't just doing the right thing here, but actually he is seeing the bigger political picture, which is the fact that the Targaryens undermine their own legitimacy when they are seen to be cruel, capricious, and unjust. After all, if the Targaryens, or any ruling authority for that matter, show the common people that the rules apply to them, but not to the elites, then they actually undermine the very concept of a shared society. This in turn has an alienating effect on people, and it is from such seeds that rebellions are grown. Maekar and Aerion believe in projecting dominance to the point where it will make people afraid to rebel. But they went too far and came across as unjust instead. And that road leads to Robert's rebellion, meaning that it was Aerys' extreme cruelty and capricious violence which motivated people to actually get off their couch and go do the hard work of overthrowing a ruling dynasty. Just to name one example, King Aerys demanded the heads of Ned and Robert from Jon Arryn, which was so cruel and unjust so as to force Jon Arryn to call his banners and declare war. But that is, again, only one example, and there is, of course, a lot more of Ares undermining his own authority, where that came from. And while it's true that a ruling power does want to project strength so that every charlatan and shithead doesn't come along and start a little rebellion, this can, again, go too far. And really, we're just talking about the King Aenys, King Maegor, King Jaehaerys spectrum of leadership philosophy, meaning that King Aenys' weakness did invite multiple rebellions, and that plunged the realm into violence. So he gets an F. Now, Maegor the Cruel did, of course, project strength, but he went way, way too far and showed the realm extreme cruelty and capricious ultra-violence, which also plunged the realm into war, and by the time of Maegor's death, he had actually eroded all of his political power and was left with no allies whatsoever. So he too gets an F, because as we all know, Maegor did not save House Targaryen. So then we have Jaehaerys, who, aided by Alysanne and Septon Barth, seems to strike the perfect middle ground. Jaehaerys shows people his dragon when he needs to, such as in the case of Rhaegar Baratheon, which you'll hear more about later this week in my 1-hour video, Most Rebellious Baratheons, or Wars and Warriors of House Baratheon. Not sure what it's going to be called, but all the rebellious Baratheons and all their wars will be in there, including Rhaegar. So yeah, Jaehaerys, he shows the dragon when he needs to, but pretty much the rest of the time, he's doing his best to rule justly and better the realm. So Jaehaerys gets like a B+, because I mean, some of the decisions he made later in his reign did kind of sort of contribute to the start of the Dance of the Dragons, but for the most part, you get the point. All right, next question. Why would egg only serve Dunk? Well, first of all, if you served anyone else, it would kind of screw up the whole Dunk and egg thing. But no, for real, it was for the same reason that Dunk immediately dropped to one knee and tried to enter Baelor Breakspear's service as soon as he saw him after the fight. Because an honorable master is damn hard to find in a world where nearly everyone is trying to claw their way to the top by any means necessary, or just trying to survive, let's say, by any means necessary. Honor and justice and steadfastness stand out like a 7-foot-tall hedge knight at the county fair. So Egg is only 9, but he's grown up in the Red Keep and King's Landing, and you know how that place is. I mean, we've seen it on a couple shows now. It's nothing but lying and backstabbing and leverage manipulation. I think it's called The Game of Thrones. And then on top of that, Egg grew up with Aerion for an older brother. And as we learned a couple weeks back, Aerion was in fact abusive to Egg, and probably his other siblings, and almost certainly all the serving men and women in the castle that Aerion ever chanced to come across. Now, because Egg is a 9-year-old boy, he dreams of doing things that 9-year-old boys in Westeros dream of, such as becoming a knight of the Kingsguard. That's just what little Bran wanted to do at about the same age. And of course, Egg is way, way down the line of succession at this point in time, so it kind of makes sense that this is something he might aspire to do. You know, like Aemon the Dragon Knight Targaryen. Although it is true that Egg, as he himself admits, is a bit on the runty side. But the point is, in order to become a knight, you have to first squire for a knight. And Egg has seen Dunk's true character now. His bravery and courage, his steadfastness, his endless striving to be an honorable knight, to do the right thing. Except for stuff where it doesn't really matter, you know, like sort of fudging the fact that you're not actually a knight so you can enter the tourney. I mean, that doesn't really affect anyone. But don't go breaking puppeteers' fingers around, Dunk, because you'll get the fist of justice. So compare Dunk to Egg's older brothers. We mentioned Aerion, but Daeron the Drunkard, he was the one that Egg was supposed to be squiring for at the tourney, but of course, Daeron the Drunkard obviously is struggling with depression and substance abuse based on the fact that he is such a vivid dragon dreamer. So in a more normal situation, Maekar might see that, you know, Daeron's not really working out, and he might move Egg over to squiring for Aerion. But Aerion is Aerion. He's a good jouster and a combatant, but obviously has for honor. That's why it makes perfect sense that Egg would insist on only squiring for Sir Duncan. And besides, Egg basically helped create Sir Duncan the Tall. I mean, Dunk needed a lot of help at Ashford Meadow, and Egg was there every step of the way. And of course, it was Egg who recruited Lyonel Baratheon, Robin Risling, Humphrey Beesbury, and Humphrey Harding to fight for Dunk in the first place. So Dunk would have been completely assed out if it weren't for Egg. So yeah, Egg is invested in Dunk, and besides, they're friends now. All right, so why did Dunk choose the Hedge Knight life over the offered castle life? Well, because Baelor Breakspear was the only High Lord who had ever proven himself honorable to Dunk. In other words, Dunk is caught in kind of the same position that Egg is in, wondering if there is a just master anywhere to be found in the land. And when Dunk did find him, when Baelor proved himself in the trial by 7, Dunk immediately dropped to one knee and tried to swear into his service. In other words, Dunk actually would have been willing to give up that Hedge Knight, that glamorous Hedge Knight life, and live in a castle, but only as long as he was serving the honorable Prince Baelor. Take away the honorable prince, and Dunk is suddenly extolling the virtues of the Hedge Knight life, of sleeping in ditches and eating hard salt beef. Dunk is understandably wary of having to compromise his honor by being stuck serving an unjust master, which is, of course, a large part of the reason, if not the reason, that Sir Arlen stuck with the Hedge Knight life and only took temporary contracts with lords and nobles. Now, it's pretty easy to spot Baelor Breakspear as an honorable lord given his actions, but I'm guessing that Dunk probably doesn't trust his ability to sort out the rest of the high lords of the land and figure out who might be a just master. As much as we do like Lyonel, he's kind of a wild card and also a very dominating personality. Dunk may not feel like he has enough worldly experience to make such a permanent life choice, just like we shouldn't make kids choose what career they want to have when they're like 16. No, it'll be good. Just sign up for $100,000 of college debt. I'm sure the jobs and industries of tomorrow won't change on you before you pay that off or anything. So think about it like this. Dunk is still kind of a feral street kid from King's Landing, and he's just not sure yet about living in a castle. So it's kind of like training a wild animal to eat from your hand. It takes time. You have to build trust. And I'm literally thinking of my mom slowly taming a feral outdoor cat to the point where it became her indoor-outdoor cat. It was a process. The cat is skeptical of living inside, just like Dunk is skeptical of living inside. It's the same thing. So Dunk is going to stick to what he knows and what got him here for now. And he's going to see how much further that can take him before he signs over his free will to someone else. I mean, heck, Lyonel is already talking about, well, there's probably a war coming soon, and when a Baratheon starts talking about a war coming, it's because they're thinking of starting one. And if you want more on rebellious Baratheons and all their many wars and rebellions and uprisings, then simply make sure you're subscribed to the channel with the notifications set to all, because I am making that video later this week. Most rebellious Baratheons and Durrandons, and there are a ton of them. They really, really like war. And that is probably a big reason, besides the fact that Storm's End is a little boring, that Dunk was probably wise not to go with Lyonel. All right, so for Maekar, we have 3 interrelated questions. Why did he support Aerion at first? Why did he then decide to punish Aerion after the tourney? And why will Maekar ultimately agree to allow Egg to go and squire for Dunk on the road as a Hedge Knight? Well, Dunk would be the Hedge Knight. Egg would be the Hedge Knight Squire, which is even lower on the totem pole. So these will be pretty easy to answer based on what we have said already. Maekar initially backed his son Aerion, not only because he's his son, but because they essentially share the same ruling philosophy, even if Maekar is less obnoxious and less cruel. Maekar, as we said earlier, believes in always projecting strength and never tolerating even a whiff of disloyalty or rebellion. Said another way, Maekar believes in enforcing the class divide at all times and at all costs. The basic injustice of Aerion mutilating Tanzel's fingers doesn't even really matter in relation to Maekar's need to send the message that no commoner may ever lay hands on a royal. Now, I really can't help but to see the parallel to modern life in America, where police and now ICE are very quick to resort to violence against common citizens. But the wealthy and powerful are above the law. They can literally traffic children and commit unspeakable acts and escape any sort of consequences whatsoever, even when our own government has literally terabytes and terabytes of hard incriminating evidence. Again, for decades and decades, presidential administrations from both parties. Or perhaps an even more direct parallel would be the way that Luigi Mangione was charged with terrorism for his alleged murder of a healthcare CEO. But those same sorts of healthcare CEOs can make decisions that result in the deaths of thousands and thousands of people and never be labeled a terrorist or murderer or held accountable for any of it. So that is the message that Maekar is sending by backing Aerion. Stay in your place, you commoners. We can inflict any degree of violence on you, and you have no right to resist or object. So then we come to the question, what does it take for someone like Maekar to actually question their own deeply held personal philosophies? Well, the death of your brother, accidental death, but death of your brother at your hands, that might do it. That might cause some reflection. How about your eldest son, totally humiliating and disgracing himself, and by extension, you? At the end of the day, if what you're doing isn't working, you got to try something different. And we can tell that Maekar is pretty spun out from the events of the tourney, to say the least. And even though he initially scoffed at the Andal ritual of the trial by 7 and the idea that that would somehow allow the gods to render their judgment, we can see Maekar being forced to confront the reality of what has happened here. So this is the reason why he punishes Aerion. This is why he is perhaps beginning to question the idea of Targaryen supremacy, maybe a little bit, and why ultimately Maekar again will allow Egg to squire for Dunk out on the road and will allow the blood of the dragon to sleep in ditches. Because as Dunk said, Daeron never slept in a ditch, and all the beef that Aerion ever ate was rare and bloody. Thanks for watching, everyone, and again, watch out for my hour-long Wars and Warriors of House Baratheon video coming later this week. You've been a beautiful audience, and I'll see you next time.